When you're buying a home, you really never know who is giving you advice. And that could be true for somebody like me, where you're watching this on YouTube, but that can also be true for any real estate professional in the province of British Columbia. We're going to talk all about buying a home today in today's presentation. We're going to talk about the things that you need to know, how the process works, how to choose a realtor, and we're going to do a deep dive on everything that's pretty critically important to making sure that you make the best decisions when it comes time to purchasing your home. Today, we're going to give you what we call our buyer's mastery session. And this is the exact presentation that we give out to new clients when we onboard them when they're looking to buy a home. And this is for whether they are brand new to the process or if they are seasoned veterans. Real estate is an ever changing thing. Living in British Columbia, it's always on the front page of the newspaper. It's always something that people are talking about. So we want to make sure you get it right because actually our company slogan, in fact, is you've only got one chance to buy or sell your next home. Let's get it right. Well, why do we say that? We say that because you really literally only get one shot. It's not something you're going to do again next weekend. When you're buying a home, it is such a big commitment. It's such a big deal. We want to make sure that you absolutely nail it when it comes to doing it. And the purpose of this video is to give you the advice to be able to do that. So this is called our buyer's mastery session, and I'm excited to give it to you today. Now, I've got some notes here that I want to make sure I share with you before we get into it. And that is that this whole presentation is an overview. Okay. And this is what we give to people that we help buy a home, as I had mentioned. But with that being said, they also get the benefit of working with our real estate team throughout the entire process. So if you're looking for a deeper dive on some of the information that we're going to share today, I'm going to let you know towards the end of the video how you're going to be able to access that information. Additionally, we're going to have chapters down below in the description for this video. So if you feel that you know some of this content and you're looking to skip ahead, by all means, please do so. This is all about giving you value and making sure you know exactly what you're getting into when you're buying a home. So with that being said, let's jump into it right now. All right, so we call this our buyer's mastery session, and the reason for that is quite simple. We want you to absolutely master the process of buying a home. And one of the things that you should probably know, and question you might be asking yourself is, well, why should you listen to me, this random guy on YouTube? Well, if you don't know me, if the channel is new to you, my name is Darren. I'm the leader of the German group, named after myself. So I've been selling real estate in the Surrey and surrounding municipalities since roughly about 2007. Been very, very fortunate in my career and have a lot of different things to be able to lean on. But just to keep it quick, I've been lucky enough to be in the top 10% of the entire real estate industry in the real estate board that I perform in since 2013, and in the top 1% of the industry since 2017. A little bit of the history that I have: I'm actually the former chair of the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. So I have a little bit of a different lens in terms of what's going on in organized real estate, generally speaking. And because of a lot of my experience, not only the success in helping people buy and sell homes, being in the top 1%, that really is just a transactional thing. That's how many deals we do per year. That's really what lands you into that. It's got nothing to do with a level of service or anything like that. And that's something we're going to talk about when you're picking a realtor later on in this presentation. But because of the volume that we do and because of my past background in organized real estate and volunteering within the real estate industry, we've been fortunate enough to be featured on some pretty significant local programming like Global News, CTV, Business in Vancouver, etc. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, you might consider doing that, because this channel that you're watching this video on is completely dedicated to everything that's going on in Surrey, British Columbia, White Rock, British Columbia, and British Columbia real estate in general. And I can tell you with authority, there is always wild stuff going on in British Columbia real estate as our government continues to try and address housing affordability. And some things they get really right and some things they get really wrong. So if you want to be entertained, you're definitely going to want to check that out. So anyways, that's who I am. Okay. So, we're going to talk first of all about the steps to a successful purchase. What do you need to do to put yourself in a position to be successful? So, these are normally questions that we would go over with people as we are talking to them on a Zoom call, maybe, or something like that. But I don't want you to skip over these because they are important. And that's really who is involved. Who is involved in your ultimate decision. If you're a first time buyer, as an example, you might really rely on the input of one of your parents or both of your parents. Maybe you've been in a long-term relationship. Obviously, if you're married, you should probably talk to your spouse about buying a home. Maybe your kids' opinions are important to you, but you really want to identify who's going to be involved in the purchase so they can be a part of the entire process. You also want to consider what are your most important considerations about the process. So what do I mean by that? Well, everybody wants, 3 acres on White Rock Beach with an ocean view and a brand new home. Wouldn't that be ideal? With that being said, though, everybody's got a budget. So you really need to make a decision on what are your must haves in a home, your non negotiables. But we've all got things that we want in a home, but we might be willing to settle on homes that don't have them if everything else was kind of in line. And those are the sorts of things you want to know going into a process like this. You're also going to want to decide on what location is really central to where you want to be. If you work in Burnaby, maybe living in North Surrey is a great option, but maybe it's also not a great option. If you have to do lots of commuting, where are your friends located? Where is your family located? Do you have grandchildren that you want to visit frequently? So these are things you need to think about when you're deciding on the location of your home. And I'll tell you one of the number one things that we see that really keeps people held back from making decisions when they actually get started in the process of looking to buy a home. And that's just simply the fact that they don't know exactly where they want to live. They don't have a clear location in mind. And that really kind of hinders them in terms of being able to make decisions. So that's a really important one. So, excuse me, I get a drink of coffee here. Mm. And the next one, how are you going to finance your plan? Now, do not be one of those people who say, it's fine. We'll figure it out when the time comes. That is not the way to buy real estate. And that's a really great way to end up being very upset and wasting a ton of time, not only your own time, but other professionals' time, and really setting yourself up for heartbreak. So, we're going to talk a lot about financing in this video today as well. And I think that's going to be really useful for you moving forward. But you want to have a good understanding of how you're going to finance your plan in general. And the last question is, when do you want to be there? You do not write an offer on a home and typically move in right away. So there's other people involved in this scenario, and you want to make sure that you have a good idea of when you want to be in your home. Because if you want to be in your home 3 months from now, well, today is the day to start looking right now. If it was sometime, 9 months from now, then you can start doing your planning in advance. But you need to have that clearly in your mind as well. Okay. So, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the mortgage process now. And this is something I feel like that doesn't get regularly talked about nearly as much as it should because it's so impactful to a buyer when they are buying a home. They're a really big part of your team, the mortgage professional that's helping you. And we just see so many people get it wrong. And I'll tell you why they get it wrong. And it's actually kind of showing on the screen here right now. So, a lot of people will go in and they will either get what's called a pre-approval or a pre-qualification. And sometimes these get mixed up based on how people describe them, but it's what goes into them that's really important. Okay. So oftentimes people will go into the bank and they'll get what's called a pre approval. And this is a really great start. Before you go house hunting. Okay. And it's a great start. And I'll tell you why it's a great start because it helps you understand what your options are. And it gives you a ballpark estimate on what your affordability might look like. So you get a rough idea. You're not quite there yet, but you've got an idea of what you can afford. So you can start playing around on realtor.ca and online to see what homes might be out there, which is absolutely great and absolutely fine depending on where you are in your journey. The other option that you might consider is getting what's called a pre-qualification, and we consider this an essential step for when you actually start house hunting, when you're actually physically going out and looking at properties. The reason for this, well, you can read it on the screen, but you get an accurate assessment of the affordability of what you can actually buy. So it's not a guess anymore. This is actually pulling your numbers. This is where you're going to have your credit score pulled. This is where you're going to provide pay stubs from your employer. You're going to get a really accurate idea of exactly what your affordability is. This is also going to help you narrow down lenders. There's various lenders out there. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But you obviously want to make sure you're getting the best mortgage. So this is a conversation that's great to have at that particular time. You're also able to do any troubleshooting. So you don't want to find yourself getting into a situation where you've got an offer on a property, but then something pops up in your credit or with your financing, and it's something that takes a lot of time to troubleshoot. Well, by doing this all in advance, you're not going to run into those issues like you would if you did it way too late and really risk losing the home that you're interested in. Maybe the market's busier than we suspect, or maybe there's other people waiting on the doorstep to get this place. So you don't want that to happen. And why even leave it to chance, right? So you want to make sure that you got that troubleshooting all completed. Another big feature is a rate hold. So we're in a market right now where ideally the rates are going to continue coming down, hopefully, right? But nobody knows. But the nice thing about getting a rate hold is that rate hold will last you typically anywhere between 90 to 120 days. And what the VIG value is for that is if the rates for whatever reason went up, which they certainly could, fixed rates could easily go up. They're not set in stone. Those are controlled by the bond market. So if you were to get a rate hold and the rates went up by the time that you actually closed on your property, well, you would get to benefit from the lower rate that you were quoted and that you locked in when you got your pre-qualification, which is a big advantage and a big feature. And then the last one is it allows you to proceed with speed and confidence. So the biggest reason that I see, or one of the biggest reasons, I guess I would say, is that I see home buyers fail is because of their mortgage provider, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But many, to be frank, they're not doing their buyers the biggest level of service because they're sending them out shopping with just a simple pre-approval. And the amount of times earlier on in my career, I've been selling real estate now since 2007. So I'm at, I'll let you do the math at home. But the amount of times early on in my career where I used to hear people say, oh, my bank told me I could afford this amount. They go out, they write an offer on a home. They put all this energy into the home. They spend money on things like home inspections and appraisals, only to find out that they can't get the home because there's something wrong with what they were told that they could afford. And it's not about the money, it's not about the time. It's about losing the house that you are absolutely in love with. I mean, that's really honestly the biggest problem with that. There's various problems, obviously, but that's typically the biggest one I see, and that can all be avoided by doing this properly. So don't let a mortgage professional send you out with just a pre-approval. If you're really ready and serious to buy a home, you definitely want to go ahead and get that pre-qualification, okay? So when actually before I jump into this screen here, actually what I'm going to share with you too is the three different types of lenders that you could consider. There's going in directly into the bank. There is a mobile mortgage specialist who is an extension of said bank, one of the big five or big six banks. They actually work for them. And there is something called a mortgage broker. Now, there's big differences between these three, and it's really critical that you understand what the differences are. The lowest value, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, is going directly into the bank for a mortgage. We've done many deals with people like this that have gone directly into the bank and they've worked with somebody who is at the bank who's paid by the hour. So let me paint a quick picture for you on that. They're paid by the hour. They've got very limited time. They're overworked. They've got somebody coming in every half hour slot, likely right after you. These people tend to cost people deals when they buy homes. They tend to be incredibly slow to respond to things. They tend to be incredibly difficult to deal with. They tend to be a little less managed or a little more mismanaged, maybe is a way of saying it, than some of the other options in the marketplace that are out there. So we don't ever recommend going directly to the bank. If you were really tied to a bank, let's say you had somebody or a bank, you've been with them for a long time. People are crazy loyal to their banks for whatever reason. Do they call you on your birthday? I don't know, but hey, I get it. If you're loyal to your bank, that's okay. But what I would suggest considering is a mobile mortgage specialist. And these people are paid on commission. Now, commission, it's not a dirty word and it doesn't have to be scary. And let me explain that why. The bank is still going to pay for the services of this mobile mortgage specialist, but the benefit to you is that they're going to work extra hard to get you what you want and what you need because if they can't, well, they don't get paid. So the mobile mortgage specialist is a really great option if you want to stick with a particular bank. Maybe the bank's offering some sort of promotional items or whatnot to get a mortgage through them. So that would definitely be the route to go through if you want to work with a bank. And lastly, the third option is a mortgage broker. So by name, what a broker is they are trying to broker a deal. And what they're really doing is they're sending your file out, or this is what they should be doing anyways, is sending your file out to various lenders and seeing who can give you the very best product for your specific needs. So a mortgage broker does have the opportunity to shop the majority of lenders out there. And we're not just talking about big banks. Like there is also what's called mortgage companies that actually require mortgage brokers to bring you as a client to them to be able to offer you a mortgage. So they have a lot more options than any of the other two options on the list that we discussed earlier. It doesn't mean that they're the best. And in the deeper dive series that I'm going to talk about later on in the video, I'm going to really unpack that a ton more. So you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed to the channel or at least follow along with that series as it comes out because this is such a crucial step and we're not going to get into here just to keep a little bit of brevity to this presentation, but definitely don't miss that part of the presentation. Okay. So anyways, those are the three options that you have. Now, let's talk about we're ready. We're financially prepared to go out there and buy a home. What is next and what do we do? So, there's a little bit of a timeline here on the screen for you, and hopefully you can see it okay. But it really begins with the search. So now that you've, ideally selected a realtor, which we'll talk about later on, you're looking for homes. And that process, to be frank, is relatively easy. I find it's more about is the buyer actually ready to, decide on a home when they actually get started looking. Because I kind of compare it to like buying a car. And here's what I mean by that. We've all got a budget, right? Just like you do when you buy a car. So if you had $50,000 to go buy a car, that only buys you a certain type of car. And you might have an idea in your head of what type of cars that you're interested in. So you're going to go out and you're going to look at them. Maybe you're looking at some new ones, some used ones, doesn't really matter. But eventually you're going to make a decision because they're all starting to look the same. But you're going to make a decision on the one that's, the right color and is clean and has the best mileage and ideally is giving you the best value. And buying a home is really very much the same. The homes all start to look very, very similar to each other after a while. So the whole idea of looking at 85 homes before you make a decision isn't really something most people do. Most people typically end up making a decision after about 5 to 10 homes that they see. And that certainly doesn't mean that you need to, but that's what I find most people do when we help them purchase properties. And that also means that we're looking at the right types of properties. So that process in and of itself roughly usually takes about 3 weeks to actually locate the home, depending on what the market's doing, of course, as well. When you ideally find the home, it's time to make an offer on that property. So, what happens at that point? Well, you should be demanding of your real estate professional, whether it's us, and if you'd like to work with us, there's a link below where you can set up a call to speak with me and my team, and we'd love to chat with you. But you want to demand out of them that there's some pretty significant price research that goes into helping you make a decision on what to offer. You don't want to just guess what to put in. You don't want to look at one comparable home that sold 60 days ago and make your decisions off that. You want some really good data to make sure that you're not overpaying for that property. And there is one safety mechanism in that I'll let you know about, and that's really an appraisal. If you do require an appraisal from your bank to be able to get the lending, that is a third party who will look at the value as well, and they won't lend you the money if they think you're paying too much for it. They'll tell the bank not to give you the money. They don't care whether you get it or not. They're getting paid anyways. But with that being said, you don't want to get to that point, right? So we want to make sure that you're getting really good pricing information so you can make an educated and informed decision as you go in to making your offer on the property. Once that offer goes in, that might go back and forth with the seller, okay? But ideally, eventually, you're going to get something agreed to. And on that offer is where you're going to put conditions on your offer and negotiate it to a successful finish. Or it's really more less than a finish, more of a start. So we'll talk about conditions a little bit more a little bit later on in this video, but that process of making an offer, negotiating typically only takes a day or two. It's usually relatively quick depending on what the market's doing. Once that offer gets accepted by the seller, we're into what's called the acceptance period, or we actually call it at the German group, we call it our due diligence period. And with the due diligence period, this is where you're starting to do homework on the home. Because oftentimes when you're making an offer, you might not have had an opportunity to do all the homework that you needed to prior to being able to make that offer. So you've loaded your offer up with what's called conditions. And should those conditions prove to be successful, you'll go ahead and you'll continue on with the purchase of the home. It's almost like you have to do a secondary contract when you have conditions to fully commit to that property. So you're going to go through that due diligence period. And again, ideally, everything checks out. You're going to send the deal off to the bank to see if you can get financing. You're going to possibly have the property inspected. If you're buying a strata property, you're going to go through all the strata documentation, make sure you're making an informed decision. And that due diligence period is usually about 7 to 10 days. After we remove those conditions and we've satisfied the due diligence, you're into planning your move. You're not moving in typically right away after you remove your conditions. That period is actually usually about 6 to 8 weeks. So, a good real estate professional is going to help you plan your move, probably help you get in touch with a good lawyer or notary to represent you for the actual final part of the transaction and provide you with lots of post sale service. But what you can see from this entire timeline here is even if you started today wanting to buy a home, and these are all average time frames, but you're really about 3 months away from actually being in the property that you want to live in. So keep that in mind as you're planning your schedule or your calendar for this year, and you're trying to decide when's the best time for you to get in the home. Like many people like to move in the spring and the fall. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the winter and the summer, but you got to decide when you want to be in the home more so than you do about when you want to actually start looking. That's kind of secondary to that. So that's what the timeline looks like. So now that you know the time frame, it's really time to get started on the search. And this is some of the primary, secondary, and tertiary criteria that you're going to want to consider. Now, at the German Group, we would actually usually build your search together with you on our realtor's backend system where we can search by criteria that is just unbelievable, much better than what the public has access to. And obviously, you would assume that we should have better tools than the public. But you want to decide on what your primary criteria is. Those are easy things like location, price. If you want a certain size lot or a certain size home, maybe age of home is another one. Secondary criteria is like bedrooms and bathrooms and age of the home, as I mentioned earlier. I guess I wasn't reading my own slides. And tertiary criteria. So, what's that nice to have stuff? Maybe it's important, maybe it's not, like parking, or is there certain finishings, maybe the way the yard faces, the style of the home, certain bylaw restrictions, that sort of thing. But you want to create that together with your real estate professional because you want to make sure that you're both on the absolute same page. So, why is that important? Because you're relying on them as part of all the tons of things that real estate professionals do. You're relying on them to recognize good properties for you and bring them to your attention when they come up for sale. So you want to make sure you're both very clear. You don't want to be looking at properties that aren't in line with what your realtor is aware of because it's really important that you're both on the same page. So you've got your search going. When it comes to actually looking at homes, we find that next day's notice for viewings is best. The sellers want to show their home in the best light. They don't want you running out 2 hours after you make a phone call to go see it because the house probably isn't quite ready yet. And especially as homes sit on the market, they're usually not show ready. So it's actually better for you and better for the sellers to have it presented in its best light. So we usually recommend next day's showings. And you also want to make the most of your time. So when you're going out and you're looking at these properties, don't just look at one property. Ideally, if you have more options than that, try and do around 4 or 5. The reason you probably don't want to do more than 4 or 5 is it all starts to kind of blend together and mush together in your mind and makes it really hard to remember specific properties. So unless you're someone coming in from out of town, you've got a very short time frame, I would always recommend that you kind of stick around the 4 mark and go out and look at properties in that regard. You should also really settle on some good alignment questions at each property. What's really important to you at that property? And does it fulfill what you're looking for? So an example that, fairly simple ones would be like, do you like the location of this home? Well, if you don't like the location of it, you should just leave. Do you like the layout of this home? It's layout is something that can be changed, but it's really expensive to do. So you're just better to go find something else. And then a really great question is, would you consider putting an offer in on this home? Now, that's not, do you want to write an offer? That's something totally different. But ideally, what you're able to do is as you start looking at properties, you're creating two piles. You're creating a yes pile and a no pile. And perhaps one day in the future, time permitting, market permitting, you're going to go back and you're going to look at all those properties in the yes pile. And maybe that'll help you make a decision on the absolute best home for you. So, those are some of the great alignment questions that we like. And then, of course, if you don't find anything that works for your needs, well, you just go ahead and you schedule a future timeout together to go hit the street and look at more real estate. So, that's okay. But we're fast forwarding here a little bit now. So you found the perfect property. This is the one that you want to buy. Okay. I mean, it's time to write an offer. Well, we talked about getting what we call at the German group a home value audit. Okay. This is where we're going to be reviewing characteristically similar homes to the one that you're interested in, whether they're available for sale still or ones that have sold recently. We're also going to take into account what's happening with mortgage rates and what's happening with the market trends because we want to make sure that you're not overpaying for a property. You're getting a fair value for it, or at the very best, you're getting an absolute steal of a deal for it. That's what our job is, right? But it's important that you know exactly what you're going to offer for it or what a fair market value might be. So you want to demand that in writing from any real estate professional that you're going to work with. You should also be talking about what conditions are required to protect your best interest. And there's really common conditions, the conditions that we see all the time. And those conditions are good starter conditions. And what I mean by that is kind of like walking down a path and you find maybe something that looks a little out of place and you steer off that path and start walking down another one. These kind of primary type conditions, those are really going to help you understand things about the home in the best light. And ideally, you don't have to get into the weeds too much on other things because everything starts to check out, but they're going to allow you to go further down the path. And we'll talk about what types of conditions you might consider putting on an offer later on. But with that being said, these are due diligence clauses. These are required for your protection to make sure you know absolutely everything about the property you're buying and you're an informed home buyer, which is absolutely critical. And you're going to want to decide on things like what do you want to offer, when do you want to move in, and how much of a deposit do you want to put down on the property should you remove your conditions and want to fully commit. So it's really more practice in British Columbia that your deposit does not go down when you write an offer. Your deposit goes down at that secondary contract type time where you remove your conditions. That's when you actually put down your deposit in most cases and fully commit to the seller to purchase their home. So those are some things that you would do certainly at that time of writing an offer. And hey, your offer is now accepted. How exciting is that, right? So we're going to talk about what happens during that time right now, and these are some of those due diligence clauses that I mentioned earlier. So you're going to probably be sending the deal to the bank to make sure that you can 100% get your financing. You're likely going to want to get the home inspected, and in the deeper dive videos that are going to be available, we'll talk about maybe the times that you don't choose to inspect a home, but 99 times out of 100, you're probably going to want to do it. And it's going to help you have a very good level of comfort about maybe any broken or misrepresented items in the home or things that are going to cost you money in the long run that you want to be aware of, all that sort of stuff. So home inspections are usually, pretty well received and something most people should be doing. You're going to want to get an insurance quote on the property, especially if you're looking at buying a strata property, especially if you're looking at buying an older detached home. There's different insurance problems in different areas with different age and styles and types of homes. So that is certainly something you're going to be want to doing, something we'll do a deeper dive on in those other videos. You're going to want to review the title of the property. So you might even consider having a lawyer do this. At the German group, we actually hire a third-party lawyer service to review not only the title, but the title charges for our clients. This is unpacking a whole can of worms here, but it's just something that absolutely needs to be done and is more something that you're going to be relying on your professionals to help you with. So whether that's your real estate professional or your lawyer. Okay, there's also something called a property condition statement. It's a disclosure document done by the seller, and ideally, you're able to get one of those and see what the seller knows about the property and what they can share from you or share with you, rather. There might be external professional advice that you're considering doing as well. So, whether something kind of comes out of the forefront that you weren't prepared for, this is something that will allow you to maybe go speak with a lawyer, speak with a tax accountant, speak with an electrician, speak with somebody who knows knows, geo stability on the lot, that sort of stuff. So, it really depends on kind of what's going on in what specific property. Of course, if you're buying a strata, there's strata documentation that you're going to want to absolutely review as well. And then there might be some other stuff, like I said, going down that path and discovering something and maybe finding something that you weren't necessarily quite prepared for. But those are all relatively common conditions that you would see on an offer when you actually are ready to buy it. And then you would, obviously go through these during your due diligence period. Okay, so it's time to remove your conditions. You've gone through your homework. You're happy with everything that you've discovered about the home, and you're now really ready to fully commit to it. This is when you're going to do your condition removal. Okay, so this is your kind of second contract that we were talking about earlier, where you're going to sign off and say, we've done our homework, we're happy. If something was to come up during that homework, you as the buyer have three options. Your option number one is to continue to move forward. Option number two is to try and renegotiate something with the seller, and they can or cannot participate. That's really up to them. Or your third option is to walk away. But hopefully none of that happens, right? Hopefully everything checks out and you're going to move forward with that property. You're going to remove your conditions. This is where you have bought the property, as we say. So congratulations. It's super exciting, right? This is now where it goes into a little bit of a lull period. Remember that 2 to 3 months that we talked about after you removed your conditions earlier on in our timeline. But this is where you're going to decide on a lawyer or a notary. Typically, if you haven't decided on one quite just yet, maybe you consider booking your moving company at this time. They tend to book up pretty quickly. And if you're getting older like I am, you don't want to do any moves yourself. Your back will thank you. Maybe you're choosing to hire cleaners who are going to help take care of that home on moving day. And I'll kind of clarify that. We would expect when you move into a home, I call it good house karma, that most people are going to clean the house really nice for you when you move in, but that's not everybody. And that doesn't always happen. And it's your moving day, not theirs. So if you want to make sure it goes smooth and you're as happy as you can be on that particular day, it might just be a really good peace of mind to consider hiring cleaners for that day. And you're going to want to finalize your financing and insurance in between this kind of period here. Okay. So moving forward, your conditions. Oh, we got an extra slide here for some reason. So moving forward, you've got a couple dates that I want you to keep in mind. Okay. These are dates that would happen, and you would decide on these usually in advance of your, when you write your offer. So the first one is completion date, and the second one is possession date. And this is different in different areas of Canada. So if you're watching from out of town, I hope you hear this. What a completion date is actually the day that you own your property. Okay, that's the day that your insurance should be kicking in. That's the day that your mortgage is going to begin on the property. You own the home. Okay, but in British Columbia, or maybe more so in the Lower Mainland, it's not overly common for somebody to move in on the completion date. Very commonly, they're going to move in on the possession date. So, why do they do that? And that possession date is typically about 2 to 4 days after the completion date. So, why do they do that? Well, imagine you're working with a seller and you're buying a home from a seller, but that seller also wants to purchase a property. Well, ideally, what's happening for them is, let's just use Monday to Thursday as an example. You give them the money for your new home on the Monday, and then on the Tuesday, they receive the proceeds from you for their home and they give it to the home that they want to buy. And then on the Wednesday, they move out of their old home. And on Thursday, you move into your new home. So that's an example of why those dates might be a little bit back from the completion date. That's not always the case, but certainly something to consider as you're building your dates, because you don't want to have to stay in the hotel overnight. You don't want to have to put your stuff in storage. That's no fun for anybody. A couple taxes that we will chat about at this time too, and these are always changing. So you're going to want to get advice from a tax professional or your real estate professional at the time of your purchase. But the property transfer tax is a big one in British Columbia, and first-time buyers are exempt up to certain thresholds. In fact, they just recently changed those thresholds. So you're going to want to Google those. I won't get into them too much in this video. Well, actually, no, I'll tell you about them right now. But basically, qualifying first time home buyers, and you need to know if you're a qualifying first time home buyer or not. But basically, you can be excluded from paying property transfer tax up to the first $500,000 of the purchase price. And then there is a scale between 500,000 up to 835,000. And then there's another sliding scale above that. And then you don't, who knows if you qualify and all that sort of thing. So you're going to want to talk to your professional at that time. But for people that don't qualify, you're going to pay 1% on the first $200,000 of the purchase and then 2% on the balance. And there's actually numbers that are above that after the $2 million mark. But if you're buying more than $2 million, I don't know if you're watching this YouTube video, maybe you are, but certainly you can leave a comment below and we'll give you the full details on that so you know exactly what's going on. And new construction is also excluded from property transfer tax up to a certain threshold as well. So something to keep in mind and know about. GST is not something that's usually paid on resale property. However, when I say resale property, I mean like not new property, but that's not always the case. You don't know if someone was using that property as a business, like an Airbnb, as an example. So you need to be careful with this whole GST thing. I'm not going to paint it with a brush here. You're going to want to talk to your real estate professional about that, or your tax accountant about that. But most times, GST is not something that's needing to be worried about on resale property. It's only for things like new construction or bare land. And of course, in British Columbia, we have a foreign buyers tax in certain areas. So most of the major areas have this foreign buyers tax. But as of right now, foreign entities can't even buy in Canada. There's a few loopholes to this, but they can't even buy in Canada until 2027. And oh, I just lost my battery there, had to change it. My apologies on that. What I was saying is there's a ban on non-foreign residents buying real estate in Canada right now that's effective until 2027. And I assume that's probably going to get extended, but who knows? Well, time will tell, but we'll have to see. So the 20% foreign buyers tax is really not something that most people have to worry about. And if you are a foreign buyer, you'll have to see if you can even buy here in the first place. So that's the process in a nutshell. What I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about hiring a realtor. Okay. And, actually, and if you got any questions about the process, you can certainly leave a comment below, or you can book a call with me and my team. That's in the description below and also one of the pinned comments. So we're certainly happy to walk through anything with you. And but now is a really good time to talk about hiring a real estate professional. I feel like a lot of people get this part wrong. And with respect, real estate professionals are pretty incredible people. They work very, very hard. What I would add to that is it's a really hard industry to crack. And there's certain things that people really should know, in my opinion, about the people they choose to work with. And you've got to be armed to ask the right questions. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a perspective check on hiring a real estate professional and some things that many people maybe don't know or don't consider when they go through that process. So let me paint you a little bit of a picture here. Imagine you go on holidays and you get really, really sick. Okay. And you need help. So you end up going to the doctor. The doctor's going to help you. They're going to help you get better. And you've got a really good understanding that that's what that doctor's job is. They're there to help you. I can't remember what their phrase is like, uh, help all or something. It's some Latin phrase or whatever it is. But we all have a certain expectation of a doctor that they're there to help us, regardless of how they're compensated, all that sort of stuff. A doctor's there to help everybody. But that's not necessarily what a realtor is, at least in British Columbia. And there's some other areas in North America that are starting to catch on to this, but it's a little bit different in British Columbia. So I'll explain that. A realtor in British Columbia either works for you or they kind of work against you. Okay. And we have a terminology here, which I'm going to show you a little bit later on, called client or non-client. And that doesn't mean that you're formally working with that realtor at this point, but what that means is you have an understanding of what the obligations of that realtor are to you. And in lieu of that realtor not working for you, they effectively work against you. Meaning if they had another client, as an example, that you wanted to maybe buy their property, their job for their client is to get all the information they can about you and give it to their client, to get all the money out of your wallet from you and give it to their client, to get the best terms of contract for their client. So the more they know about you, the more detrimental that becomes. So I want you to think of a realtor in British Columbia more like a lawyer. A lawyer is very specific in who their client is, and so are realtors in British Columbia. You would never go to court with somebody who is suing you and use the same lawyer to save money or for whatever reason. I don't even know why you would do that, but you would never do that with a lawyer, and you should never do that with a real estate professional either. So some people are still able to use the same realtor in certain circumstances in British Columbia, but for the most part, you're going to want to consider getting your own individual representation because this is about you. This is about making sure that you are best protected and making probably one of the best purchases of your life. One of the biggest things you're ever going to spend money on. You need to get it right, and you need to make sure that that person working for you is doing so in your best interest. This is something that we call agency. Who's your agency towards? And this is a really big deal. And these are the four things that a realtor owes you when they work for you. But if they don't work for you, if you're considered a non client of this, they don't owe you any of this. It's actually the opposite of what they owe you. The only job a realtor owes to somebody who's considered a non client is to be truthful, to be honest with you. Okay. That doesn't mean they have to answer all your questions, though. They can choose to not to, right? They don't work for you. So these are the four things that a realtor working for you that they owe you. Number one is loyalty. They're legally obligated to protect and promote your best interest. Okay. It's almost like the two of you are buying this home together and they are legally obligated to do the best they can for you, to do it in your best interest. Confidentiality. If you're moving for certain reasons, if you have a certain time frame you need to be there, if you have a certain amount of money that you're able to spend, that money should stay between you and your real estate provider, and you don't want that getting out. So all that information should remain confidential. Full disclosure, anything they learn about a property that they think will either add to or take away from your interest in it, or might, force you away from a decision or into a decision, their job is to help you uncover those things and give you full disclosure on everything, as well as around how they get paid, which is something I'm going to chat about a little bit later. And the last one is conflict avoidance. Okay. Most areas, especially where the German group serves in Surrey, BC, White Rock, BC, surrounding municipalities, lower mainland of British Columbia, really, a realtor should not be selling you their own listing. If they are able to sell you their own listing, especially in the lower mainland, well, that means that you probably are not represented. You're being treated as a non client. That's a really, really risky spot to be in. So you should definitely have your own representation. Now, in really remote areas of British Columbia, it's a little bit different. If there is literally only like one realtor that serves the area and there's nobody else that can help, they do have an opportunity to do what's called dual agency. But this is something that was pretty much abolished back in 2018, might have been 2016. Nonetheless, you want to make sure you have your own representation. I think you kind of see where I'm going with that. So, and there's actually a document that's to be provided to you prior to a realtor providing services and opinions to you on certain things. So I'm going to show you that a little bit later on. If you're unfamiliar with what a realtor does, this is a great list of exactly what a realtor does. Okay, so as an example, they are going to represent your best interests and protect your personal position, kind of similar to what we talked about previously. They're also a third party negotiator. Okay, it's not fun to negotiate for yourself on many things, it's uncomfortable. We don't like it. But when you're negotiating for somebody else, it's a lot of fun. But I'll tell you what else. There's no emotion when you're negotiating for somebody else. It's more so strategy. So consider a realtor who's negotiated for clients on successful purchases many, many times in their career. They've done this a lot more than you have. So they can be a third party negotiator and help you navigate that to ideally help you get the outcome you're looking for. Real time market values. I think that's one that we talked about a little bit earlier. And also filtering the homes that you view. You don't want to waste your time. You're a busy person. You want to be looking at homes that are your best fit for you, and you don't want to be looking at stuff that you're not interested in. You want somebody who manages and oversees the entire process. They're kind of like the conductor of the entire orchestra, making sure everything kind of hums along perfectly for you, and that's really what their job is. And you might need a supporting team as well. So an example of that is you might need a great home inspector, and you don't want to pick somebody from the phone book. You want the best of the best. This is a big investment. You want the best of the best mortgage provider. You want the best of the best lawyer or notary for whatever you're doing. And you might need outside sources as well, outside of that group I just mentioned. So you want a supporting team, and they likely have really good contacts for you. You don't want any guesswork in the entire thing. You want somebody who can write an enforceable agreement for you. And you also want somebody that's insured for your protection. So for whatever reason they screw up, they're insured for your benefits. So, you're not put out by that. So this is where it comes down to picking a real estate professional. And I love this line. Your agent only matters if your results matter. Think about that. picking a real estate professional only matters if the results matter. What does that mean? Well, this is a little bit of a list of how most people choose their realtor. There obviously is a variety of ways, and we've kind of identified the ways that we think are the best. They're in blue. They might be a little hard to see on your screen here, but the eight areas rather are area expert, situational expert, what price they charge, the reputation they have, the results that they produce, the compatibility you feel with them, the relationship you have with them, or just plain out happenstance. You met them at an open house. And it's not to say any of these are necessarily bad, but the ones that we think you should really focus on are situational expert. Okay. Maybe you're going through a separation. Maybe it's an estate sale. There's different situations that require people that have different areas of expertise. Maybe you want an area expert, somebody who knows the area like the back of their hand. As an example, a lot of people call our real estate team because they're buying in South Surrey and White Rock or Surrey. And we've been selling in that area since 2007 in the top 1%, as we mentioned earlier. So they want somebody who knows the buildings inside out, knows what's going on with zoning and construction, all that sort of stuff. That would be an area expert. Um, Maybe reputation. That's another big one. You want somebody who's got a long history of helping people be successful. Somebody who's maybe brand new, while they may be eager, they don't necessarily have the same experience as somebody that's been doing it a long time. So maybe the reputation and the experience is something that you're looking for. And the last one is the results produced. This is my favorite one because I'm kind of like, show me the money, show me what really the is going on here. And the results produced, I think, are the most interesting one because it's not, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do this for you. It's like, this is what I've done for other people. And if you're looking for a similar result, you could consider having this as well if you choose to work with us. So those are the four that I think are the most important. I mean, you can certainly pick somebody based on the price they charge. Commissions are completely flexible. Realtors can charge people whatever they want. If that's what you're looking for, they're out there and you can certainly find that. Compatibility. Some people pick their realtor just because they get along great with them. That's okay. You want to get along great with your realtor, but does that necessarily mean that they're the best choice for your professional to represent you in your purchase? I don't know. Relationships, another big one. My dad's girlfriend's a realtor, or my cousin's a realtor, whatever that might be. Well, that's okay. If you want to support them, that's great. But you want to make sure you know their professional criteria before you kind of start working with them. Because again, you're spending a lot of money. You're buying something really important that's not easy to transact necessarily. So you want to make sure you're getting somebody really good. And then happenstance. You met somebody at an open house and hey, great, you want to be my realtor? Great, let's go look for a house. So those are the four that we don't necessarily recommend, but you certainly can, choose however you want. This particular page here, if you really don't focus on who you're hiring, you're going to get the rights or the left side rather of this kind of table here. You're going to get things like an unorganized process where you've got, maybe a new or really unexperienced agent. I don't want to say new agents are bad. That's certainly not the point of what I'm saying. But if you want experience, you need to understand that. You might get somebody that has a second job. That's a big point of contention, a bone of contention in the real estate industry, but it's not going anywhere. People are welcome to have second jobs, but you just need to decide and be informed when you decide. Do you want somebody who does real estate full time that's there for you full time, or are you okay with somebody that's got a second job? Maybe they work a 9 to 5 and do real estate in the evenings and on the weekends, and that's okay too. But you deserve to know that. Do you want a generalist, somebody who just does it all? We buy, sell, help invest. We do land. We do, okay. Do you want a generalist? I don't know. Or do you want somebody that lacks the infrastructure on how to help you? So something to certainly consider. You also want to make sure you have a very trusting relationship with your realtor as well. So you want to be really clear on how they're being compensated. Okay. And there's many ways to compensate a realtor. Most of the time, they're going to get compensated through the listing. There's a lot of talk about commissions. There always has been. There always will be. And one of the things is one of the reasons the sellers help pay the commissions typically for the buyer's agent who helps somebody buy a home. And we do a deeper dive on this in the series that I mentioned. So I'll get into that over there. But the reason that happens is because that's where the money is. Most buyers don't have a bunch of money sitting in their account to help pay their real estate professionals. So they take it out of the listing when it sells. And this has been a really successful system for many, many years. And that's not the only way that it works, but that's the way that most transactions work. So if you're interested more more about how that works, you can check out the deeper dive there. Part of that relationship as well is that you have a really trusting relationship, as we mentioned, but you don't want a salesperson. You want somebody who's a consultant, right? Somebody who's going to be there for your best interest and really help you make good decisions. And you want somebody who's not blissfully ignorant to the process. Because of getting the reps in and doing lots of sales, they know exactly what's going on. And biggest one of all, you don't want to buy the wrong home. Okay. You don't want costly surprises when you buy a home. Surprises are not good in real estate, believe me. You don't want to be disappointed due to uninformed choices. Okay. You don't want to buy the wrong home and you don't want to overpay for that home. You work far too hard for your money. So you want to make sure that you get every dollar squeezed out of that property that you can. Okay. Or I guess you're buying, it would be the opposite of that. You want to get the best for your money that you can absolutely can. So we've got some stuff on the right hand side there that's unique to our team and whatnot. So you can certainly check that out. You can pause the video and give that a read as well. Okay. So we've got how people pick their realtor and all the things. And what I'm going to do is I want to show you four documents that we believe are quite important when you're buying a home that you should be presented with from your real estate professional as well. So, the first one is this disclosure of representation and trading services. This outlines the responsibilities of a realtor representing a person as a client or a non client. We talked about this a little bit earlier. So, this is actually to be presented to you whenever a realtor is providing you trading services, whether they're showing you properties, whether they're giving you advice. You need to know whether they are treating you as a client or a non-client. With that being said, this should be presented to you before any trading services are ever given. So that's a really important document. Okay. The next one is a privacy notice. You deserve to know what's happening with your private information, who's got it, where it's going, how it's being used, all that sort of stuff. So this is a great one from the Provincial Association, British Columbia Real Estate Association, that you're going to be provided with at some point, where it outlines how and why your personal information is disclosed, as well as allows you to have a conversation with your real estate professional about your privacy rights. The next one is what's called a buyer's agency agreement. And this is a really important one. This is mandatory in many provinces, not in British Columbia quite yet, but it is something that's being talked about being made mandatory. But when you list a home, you want to know what services you're getting from that real estate professional, and that should be the same for when you're buying a home. And what this agreement does is it really hires that realtor on your behalf to provide you services. So it clarifies the role of your agent and commits them to you. You want somebody working for you that's committed to you, I would assume. They're not just showing a home to other people that they know might react quicker on it, as an example, because they're not actually committed to you. You don't have a working relationship, a working agreement with them. It also clarifies your role to the agent and allows you to hire them for a fixed period of time. It identifies how the agent is compensated. Again, in our deep dive videos, I'll mention those again one more time towards the end on how to get access to them. But you need to understand how realtors are paid. That's really, really important. Okay. It allows you to hold your agent accountable. Again, really, really important. If you don't have one of these, how do you hold them accountable? Because you haven't actually hired them for service yet. And it says affiliate agents throughout BC there, because if you're looking anywhere else in the province, we have affiliate agents all throughout the province of incredible realtors that can help you. So if you're not buying in our local marketplace of White Rock or Surrey or the surrounding municipalities, you can still hit us up and let us know, and we'll connect you with somebody great in your own local area that can help you. Okay, so that's a buyer's agency agreement. And then financing confirmation. This allows us to have, and this is unique to the German group, but this allows us to have direct conversations with your financer to make sure not only they're on the ball, but we're also going to have a close working relationship with them. We want to make sure that everything's going to go smoothly for you. So this is something that just allows us to share information back and forth with them. Okay. So that is really the presentation up to this point. Now, what we would normally do after this is we would, what we would call onboard a client. What we would do is we would start creating the search together, and it's really time to get that process started. We're working together, and it's time to go. So if you're interested in that, again, you can contact us through the link in the description, and we'd love to meet you and see what we can do to help you find your home. You can see all of our incredible stats right on our website. We let people know exactly what we've been able to accomplish for people in the past. So that's certainly all up there. As I had promised, there is going to be a series of deeper dive videos coming up on everything we cover today. So if you want to get even more nerded out on what we're talking about today, stay tuned, because those videos are going to start coming up next. They're gonna, there's not gonna be anything here right now, but they will come up next after this video. And if you don't see them coming up next after this video, the only reason is because they're still being uploaded. So that's a great opportunity to subscribe and make sure that you are aware of when the new videos are coming out. That's certainly something we want to make sure that you guys have access to. Please, a couple things. If you found this video valuable and you think everybody should see a video like this before they buy a home, please consider liking it or at least sharing it with somebody that you might know that is interested in buying a home. We want to make sure that when people buy homes, they get the best information possible. And this is one of the ways we can help more and more people get that, regardless of whether they use our services or not. So please like that and help the YouTube algorithm get it out to more people. And if you have questions, comment down below. Let us know. We will respond. We're real people. We will get back to you on that. And other than that, guys, we will see you on the deeper dive videos. It's coming up next. If it's not coming up next, subscribe and it will be very, very soon. Anyways, thank you for joining me. I'm Darren from the German Group, and we'll look forward to seeing you on one of our next videos. Okay? Cheers.